All right, so get ready because we're about to explore some places where uh, history and the unexplained, well, they kind of intertwine.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
going deep into the world's most haunted locations
I love it.
based on this article called 10 Most Haunted Places in the World.
Okay.
And whether you're someone who firmly believes in ghosts or you just love a good spooky story,
Right.
these spots are going to pique your curiosity.
I think what I find so fascinating about all this is that these places aren't just like your run-of-the-mill spooky spots.
Right.
They're absolutely drenched in history.
Yeah.
And it's that history that I think really fuels all those stories and legends that surround these places.
That's so true. We're talking crumbling castles and abandoned prisons and even like a whole forest
Whoa.
with a seriously eerie reputation.
Yeah,
Now, I know some of our listeners might be skeptics,
of course.
and that's totally fine. Today's deep dive is all about the stories that these places tell. This
Yeah.
blend of history and mystery and maybe just a touch of the macabre.
I love it.
It's all about exploring this human fascination with the unknown.
It really is.
Okay, so let's start with a place that practically defines historical hauntings.
Ooh, okay.
The Tower of London.
Classic.
I mean, this place has seen it all, from royal celebrations to executions.
Right. And, of all the ghosts that are said to haunt the tower,
Yeah.
Anne Boleyn's is the one that always captures people's imaginations.
Why is that?
Well, think about it. She was accused of treason and beheaded by her own husband, Henry VIII.
Oh, yeah. Henry VIII, he was a
Yeah.
piece of work.
Yeah, not a great guy.
It's such a tragic and terrifying story, especially when you consider that image of her headless ghost wandering the tower corridors.
Yeah.
And speaking of headless ghosts,
Ooh.
they seem to pop up in folklore all over the world.
Everywhere.
Why do you think that is?
I mean, there's definitely the shock value,
Right.
but it might also go deeper.
Oh, so?
I think the image of a headless figure really taps into some of our most, primal fears. The fear of losing control, losing our identity, or even losing our minds.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a really powerful symbol, even if you don't believe in ghosts.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Speaking of places that can really mess with your mind,
All right.
let's move on to the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this.
This abandoned prison was notorious for its solitary confinement practices.
Right.
So prisoners spent nearly every hour of every day completely alone.
Wow.
And that isolation, combined with the prison's oppressive design, those long, shadowy corridors and the echoing silence,
Yeah.
it creates an atmosphere that just feels unsettling.
Very much so.
It's almost as if the building itself is designed to evoke a sense of unease.
I agree.
It's no wonder visitors report hearing disembodied voices and footsteps, even screams coming from those empty cells.
It's creepy.
You have to wonder if the suffering those prisoners endured somehow lingered in the very walls of the prison.
I think it raises a really fascinating question about the nature of hauntings. Are these actual spirits, or are they echoes of past trauma?
Hmm.
Is it even possible for energy, even negative energy, to leave an imprint on a place?
That is mind-blowing.
Right.
Okay, now for something completely different.
Okay, I'm ready.
Akegahara Forest in Japan.
Ooh, yeah, I've heard of this one.
And it's just shrouded in this really unsettling energy.
Yeah, it's intense.
What I find most intriguing is that people report their compasses going haywire in the forest.
Really?
Is there any scientific explanation for that?
There are theories about magnetic anomalies,
Okay.
but nothing definitive. That detail, I think, just adds to the mystery and fear surrounding the forest.
Yeah, for sure.
What's interesting is how Akegahara ties into Japanese spiritual beliefs,
Oh, real?
particularly the concept of yurei.
You're right.
Yurei. These are restless spirits, often tied to tragic deaths who haven't found peace.
Oh, wow.
And so you have the forest history combined with these cultural beliefs,
Right.
creating a really potent blend of folklore and real-life tragedy.
Yeah.
It's like the forest itself has absorbed the sorrow of those lost souls.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is.
And that sense of sorrow is palpable to many who visit,
Yeah.
contributing to Aokigahara's very dark reputation.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, next we're going to a place that is completely off limits.
Okay.
Poveglia Island in Italy. It has a really long and disturbing history. First as a plague quarantine zone,
Oh, wow.
and then as a mental asylum.
Whoa.
It's estimated that over 160,000 people died on this tiny island.
Just imagine the concentration of suffering in such a confined space.
I know, right?
It's no wonder Poveglia is considered one of the most haunted places in the world.
It really is. And even though it's closed to the public,
Right.
people who have gotten close report hearing ghostly screams and seeing shadowy figures.
Wow.
It's as if the island itself is a monument to the fear and isolation those people experienced.
It's a stark reminder of how history can leave an indelible mark on a place, especially when that history is filled with tragedy and suffering.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of history leaving its mark,
Okay.
our next stop takes us to the Myrtles Plantation in Louisiana.
Ooh, I've heard of this one.
It's an antebellum mansion steeped in Southern charm and a whole lot of ghostly tales.
Yeah, what's one story that really stands out to you?
Out of all the stories that surround the Myrtles, it's the story of Chloe,
Chloe.
the enslaved woman who supposedly poisoned the plantation owner's family.
Wow.
She's often depicted wearing a green turban, and it's such a captivating image.
I can imagine that.
It's a really tragic story.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about the power dynamics at play on a plantation like that,
For sure.
and how they might be reflected in the stories of hauntings.
Absolutely. Chloe's story, I think, adds a layer of social and historical complexity to your typical ghost story.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, is there any historical evidence to support her story?
Right.
Or is it purely folklore?
Hmm.
Either way, it's a reminder that the past is always present,
Lucy.
especially in places like the Myrtles Plantation.
Okay, hold on to your hats, folks, because
Yeah.
we're about to descend into the catacombs of Paris.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This underground labyrinth holds the skeletal remains of over 6 million people.
Whoa.
Just let that sink in for a moment. 6 million skeletons, all carefully arranged in these seemingly endless tunnels.
I mean, bones hold a powerful symbolism, don't they?
Yeah.
They represent mortality, the fragility of life.
Right.
And in a place like the catacombs, where you're literally surrounded by the remains of millions,
Yeah.
it forces you to confront your own mortality in a very visceral way.
No kidding.
Right.
It's no wonder people report feeling uneasy down there.
Right.
I can only imagine what it would be like to wander through those tunnels, knowing that you're surrounded by the bones of people who lived and died centuries ago.
Yeah.
It's both fascinating and a little bit terrifying.
There's a psychological aspect to it, too.
Oh, really?
In a place as dark and vast as the catacombs, our minds can easily play tricks on us.
Oh, yeah.
We start to see things, hear things.
Right. Our own anxieties take shape in the shadows.
Yeah, like our imaginations run wild.
Exactly.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and head over to the Chateau de Brissac in France.
Ooh la la.
Nicknamed the Giant of the Loire Valley.
Okay.
This beautiful castle is home to a rather infamous ghost known as the Green Lady.
The Green Lady, right? She was Charlotte de Valois,
Okay.
the illegitimate daughter of King Charles VII.
Oh, wow.
She was caught having an affair,
Uh-oh.
and, well, her husband didn't take the news too kindly.
Yikes.
He murdered her.
Oh, gosh. Talk about a story ripped straight from the history books.
Really is.
And now, she said, to roam the halls of the chateau eternally wearing a green dress.
Right.
I wonder why green. Was that her favorite color, or is there some deeper meaning?
I mean, green is often associated with jealousy,
Yeah.
and betrayal is clearly a central theme in this story.
Right.
So it's possible the color is meant to reflect the emotions surrounding her death.
That adds a whole other layer of intrigue to her story.
All right, for our next stop, we're going to a place that's so haunted, the government actually prohibits people from entering after sunset.
What?
Bhangar Fort in India.
Wow. They take their ghost stories seriously?
Right. Now that's taking ghost stories seriously.
That's wild.
So Bhangar Fort is steeped in legend.
Oh, yeah.
The story goes that a wizard cursed the entire area after a local princess rejected his advances.
Ouch.
Whether or not there's any truth to the curse,
Right.
the fort remains in ruins, abandoned for centuries. I love how folklore and history just get intertwined in a place like this.
Totally.
It's almost impossible to separate fact from fiction.
Yeah.
And the fact that the government has posted signs warning people to stay away after dark,
Yeah.
that just adds fuel to the fire, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Yeah.
It plays into our natural curiosity, our fascination with the forbidden.
Yeah.
We're inherently drawn to the things we're told to avoid.
Right.
And in a way, those warnings become part of the legend itself, further cementing the fort's reputation as a truly haunted place.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Totally.
The more we tell these stories, the more they take on a life of their own.
I agree.
All right, let's move on to a location that blends luxury with hauntings in a truly unexpected way.
Okay.
The Queen Mary.
Oh, yeah.
This former ocean liner is now a floating hotel and museum in California.
What a contrast.
I know.
From glamorous cruises to ghost sightings.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about how the environment itself might contribute to the feeling of unease.
I think so too.
The Queen Mary is a massive vessel
Yeah.
with this complex network of corridors and cabins.
Right.
It's easy to get lost, to feel isolated, especially at night.
And it's not just any ship either.
Right.
The Queen Mary has a rich history,
Yeah.
having served as a troop transport during World War II.
I didn't know that.
There are stories of people dying on board accidents, maybe even some wartime tragedies.
Oh.
And some people believe that those traumatic events have left a kind of imprint on the ship, what paranormal investigators call residual energy.
Right. It's not that these ghosts are consciously haunting the ship,
Yeah.
but rather that the energy of those past events is somehow trapped there,
Oh, wow.
like a recording playing over and over again.
So it's like a ghostly echo of the past.
Precisely.
So what kind of hauntings are people reporting on the Queen Mary?
There are reports of a young girl playing by the pool, phantom footsteps echoing through the hallways,
Oh.
and even the ghostly figure of a soldier in the engine room.
Oh, gosh, it sounds like the Queen Mary has a ghost for every taste.
Right.
Speaking of places with a long and storied past,
Oh, okay.
our final stop on this haunted world tour takes us to Edinburgh Castle in Scotland.
Oh, cool.
This castle has stood guard over the city for centuries, witnessing countless battles, sieges, and royal dramas.
Edinburgh Castle isn't just a historical landmark.
Yeah.
It's a symbol of Scotland's resilience, its enduring spirit.
Right, and of course, with centuries of history comes a whole host of ghost stories.
Of course.
Castles practically scream haunted, don't they?
Totally.
With their towering walls and hidden dungeons and secret passageways.
Yeah,
It's no wonder there's such fertile ground for spooky tales.
I agree.
What are some of the most compelling ghost stories associated with Edinburgh Castle?
Well, visitors have reported seeing apparitions of former prisoners, a headless drummer boy.
Ooh. That's both creepy and kind of sad.
Right.
I wonder what his story is.
There are different versions.
Oh, yes.
One claims he was sent to investigate tunnels beneath the castle
Oh.
and was beheaded by attackers.
Oh my gosh.
Now they say you can still hear his drumming,
Really?
a warning of impending danger.
Chills.
Yeah.
It's interesting how these ghost stories often serve as cautionary tales,
Yeah.
reminding us of the dangers of the past.
Right, and in a way, they keep those memories alive,
Yeah.
ensuring that the people who lived and died in these places are not forgotten.
Mm.
It's as if the castle itself is a repository of memories,
Yeah.
both joyous and tragic.
Yeah.
And those memories, some believe, can manifest in the form of these ghostly encounters.
So we've journeyed from the Tower of London to Edinburgh Castle, exploring some truly spooky spots along the way.
We have.
Each location has its own unique story, its own chilling details.
Yeah.
But there's a common thread running through them all, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I think what we're really talking about here is the power of stories.
Yeah.
These haunted places capture our imaginations
Right.
because they tap into our deepest fears and fascinations.
Yeah.
They offer a glimpse into the unknown.
Right.
They make us question what's real, what's possible.
Yeah.
And they remind us that the world is a stranger, more wondrous place than we often give it credit for.
That's so true. And whether you believe in ghosts or not, there's something undeniably compelling about these tales.
Oh, yeah.
They make you think.
Yeah.
They make you wonder.
Right.
And sometimes that's all it takes to spark a sense of awe and wonder.
Exactly. And that sense of wonder is something we need to hold on to,
Yeah.
especially in a world that often feels over-explained.
So as we wrap up part 1 of our deep dive into the world's most haunted places,
Yeah.
I'm curious, which location has intrigued you the most so far and why?
That's a good question.
We'll continue our exploration in part 2, so stay tuned for more spine-tingling tales and fascinating insights.
Can't wait. You know, as we delve deeper into these haunted locations, one thing that keeps coming to mind is the sheer variety of hauntings people report.
Oh, totally.
I mean, you've got everything from shadowy figures to disembodied voices, playful spirits to menacing apparitions.
It's true. And that variety just makes it all the more fascinating, doesn't it?
I think so.
It makes you wonder if there are different types of ghosts or different ways that these hauntings manifest themselves.
It's a question that has intrigued paranormal researchers for centuries.
Yeah.
And while there's no, definitive answer, it's interesting to consider how these different types of hauntings might relate to the history and energy of each location.
For instance, in a place like the Eastern State Penitentiary, where there was so much suffering and isolation,
Yeah.
it's not surprising that people report hearing screams, or feeling a sense of despair.
Exactly. And then you have places like the Myrtles Plantation where the hauntings seem to be tied to specific individuals and their stories.
Yeah.
It's like those individuals have left an imprint on the very fabric of the building.
Right, like their energy is somehow embedded in the walls.
Totally.
And speaking of energy, I'm still thinking about the concept of residual energy that we discussed in relation to the Queen Mary.
Oh, yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a bit more?
Sure.
I found that idea really intriguing.
Absolutely. So the idea behind residual energy is that traumatic events can leave a sort of energetic imprint on a place.
Okay.
It's not so much that there's like a conscious spirit haunting the location,
Right.
but rather that the energy of those past events is somehow replaying itself, like a loop stuck on repeat.
So it's like a ghostly echo of the past.
Precisely.
Wow.
Imagine like a particularly emotional event, a heated argument, a moment of intense fear, or even a joyous celebration.
Yeah?
Some paranormal investigators believe that the energy from those events can linger,
Okay.
becoming embedded in the environment.
So if you're sensitive to those energies, you might pick up on those echoes of the past, even if you can't see or hear a distinct ghost.
Exactly.
That's so interesting.
And in a place like the Queen Mary, with its long and varied history, it's not hard to imagine how layers upon layers of residual energy might have accumulated over the years.
That makes me think about Edinburgh Castle, too.
Oh, yeah.
With all those centuries of battles, sieges, and royal dramas, it must be absolutely saturated with residual energy.
Oh, for sure.
No wonder visitors report seeing apparitions and feeling uneasy there.
It's like the castle walls themselves are whispering stories of the past. And that brings us to another fascinating aspect of hauntings, the stories that surround them. These stories, passed down through generations, often shape our perceptions of these places and influence our experiences when we visit them.
Right. It's like the stories prime us to expect certain things, to see and hear things that might not be there if we didn't know the backstory.
Absolutely. Take Bungar Fort, for example.
Okay.
The legend of the wizard's curse adds a whole layer of meaning to the experience of visiting that place.
Oh, for sure.
Even if you don't believe in curses, knowing the story makes you look at the ruins differently, doesn't it?
Definitely. It makes you wonder if the curse is real or if it's simply the power of suggestion at work.
It's like a chicken or egg scenario.
Right.
Do the stories create the hauntings, or do the hauntings inspire the stories?
Yeah.
It's a question that's almost impossible to answer definitively.
And that's part of what makes it all so fascinating, right?
I think so.
That element of mystery, the unknown.
Yeah.
It's what keeps us asking questions, exploring, and trying to make sense of these strange and wonderful phenomena.
Exactly. And, as we've been discussing these haunted locations, we've been focusing a lot on the fear and unease they evoke.
Right.
But I think it's important to remember that not all hauntings are negative or frightening.
That's a good point. Some people report feeling a sense of peace or even joy in the presence of certain spirits.
Precisely. And I think that speaks to the complex nature of hauntings.
Yeah.
They can be as diverse and nuanced as the people who lived and died in these places.
It reminds me of the story of the Green Lady of Chateau de Brissac.
Oh, yeah.
While her story is tragic, some people believe she's not a menacing presence,
Right.
but rather a restless spirit seeking solace or resolution.
Right. And that's what I find so compelling about hauntings.
Yeah.
They challenge us to look beyond the surface, to consider the human stories behind these supernatural encounters.
It's like we're catching glimpses into the lives of those who came before us,
Totally.
experiencing echoes of their emotions and experiences.
And in a way, it's a reminder that we're all connected across time and space.
Hmm.
These haunted locations serve as bridges between the past and the present, allowing us to connect with history and the human experience in a tangible, visceral way.
It's like we're all part of one big interconnected story,
Yeah,
and these hauntings are just another chapter in that ongoing narrative.
exactly. And while we may never fully understand the nature of hauntings or the mysteries of the afterlife, I think the exploration itself is what matters most.
Totally.
It's about keeping an open mind, asking questions, and being willing to consider the possibility that there's more to the world than meets the eye.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe in the process of exploring these haunted places,
Yeah?
we'll learn a little something about ourselves along the way.
Now, wouldn't that be a twist?
It would indeed. And on that note, we'll wrap up part 2 of our deep dive into the world's most haunted places.
Okay.
But don't worry, we've got one more part coming up
Ooh.
where we'll continue our exploration of these mysterious and intriguing locations. Stay tuned. Welcome back to our final exploration of the world's most haunted places. It's been a wild ride so far.
It really has. from the Tower of London with its tragic queen, right to the eerie depths of the Paris catacombs.
I know. And through it all, we've been grappling with some pretty big questions
Oh, yeah, for sure.
about the nature of hauntings, the power of stories,
Yeah.
and our fascination with the unknown.
I think one thing that's really struck me
What's that?
is how these places, whether it's a grand castle or a desolate island, they become almost like characters in their own right.
You know, that's a fascinating observation.
Yeah.
It's almost as if the buildings themselves absorb the energy and emotions of the people who inhabited them,
Right.
becoming vessels for those stories and memories.
Like the Myrtles plantation,
Exactly.
where the story of Chloe, the enslaved woman, is so intertwined with the plantation's history and the reported hauntings.
It adds this layer of social and historical complexity
It really does.
that
Yeah.
goes beyond the typical ghost story.
It makes you think about the lives of those who lived and worked on those plantations
Right.
and the legacies that linger long after they're gone.
Then you have places like Aokigahara Forest,
Oh, yeah.
where the stories are so deeply rooted in cultural beliefs and traditions.
Right.
The concept of yurei, those restless spirits, adds a whole other dimension to the forest's eerie reputation.
It's a reminder that our perceptions of these places are often shaped by the stories we've heard,
Right.
the beliefs we hold.
Yeah.
It's like those stories create a lens through which we experience these locations.
And I'm also thinking about Pavelia Island,
Ooh, yeah.
shrouded in its dark history of plague and isolation.
Right.
It seems like its inaccessibility only amplifies its mystique,
For sure.
making it all the more alluring to those who seek out the paranormal.
There's definitely a sense of the forbidden surrounding Pavelia Island.
Yeah.
It's like a place that's been sealed off from the world, holding on to its secrets and its sorrows.
Right.
And that in itself can be a source of fascination and fear.
It makes you wonder what really happened on that island,
I know, right?
and whether those stories of ghostly screams and shadowy figures are just legends
Yeah.
or something more.
It's a question that may never be fully answered.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's part of what keeps us intrigued.
Right. The mystery itself is part of the allure.
You know, as we've been exploring these haunted locations,
Yeah.
we've been focusing a lot on the places themselves.
Right.
But I think it's also important to consider the people who are drawn to them.
Oh, absolutely. What do you think motivates people to seek out these places to explore the paranormal?
I think it's different for everyone.
Yes.
Some are seeking thrills, a brush with the unknown.
Right.
Others are genuinely curious, wanting to understand these phenomena.
Yeah.
And some, I believe, are searching for a connection to something larger than themselves, something beyond the realm of the everyday.
Like we're all searching for meaning, for answers to those big questions about life, death, and what lies beyond.
Exactly. And these haunted places with their stories and mysteries offer a glimpse into that realm of possibility.
It's a reminder that there's still so much we don't know, so much that remains unexplained.
And that sense of wonder, that curiosity, is what I think lies at the heart of our enduring fascination with hauntings.
It makes you realize that even in this age of science and reason,
Right.
there's still a place for mystery and the unexplained.
And perhaps there always will be.
Yeah.
These stories, these haunted places, they remind us that the world is full of surprises, that there's magic and wonder to be found if we're willing to look for it.
So as we conclude our deep dive into the world's most haunted places, I'm left with a sense of awe and a renewed appreciation for the power of stories.
Me too.
These tales have transported us to different times and places, introduced us to fascinating characters, and challenged us to think about the world in new ways.
And whether you believe in ghosts or not, I think these stories have a way of staying with you,
They do.
lingering in the back of your mind long after you've heard them.
Yeah.
They make you wonder, they make you question, and they remind us that the human imagination knows no bounds.
Absolutely. So the next time you find yourself in a dark and spooky place, remember, you're not just experiencing a moment of fear or excitement.
Right.
You're tapping into a long tradition of storytelling, a tradition that connects us to the past and invites us to contemplate the mysteries of the universe.
Well said. And who knows, maybe you'll even encounter a ghost or two along the way.
Ooh, now that's a thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world's most haunted places. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep that sense of wonder alive.